The morning sun glinted off the glass and steel of Frost Architectural Innovations, casting long shadows across the pristine lobby. Elijah Frost strode through the entrance, his tailored suit impeccable, his presence commanding immediate attention. At 38, he'd built his company from the ground up, transforming it from a small design firm into an international powerhouse that shaped skylines across the globe. "Good morning, Mr. Frost," the receptionist called, her voice bright but careful. Elijah nodded without breaking stride, his eyes already on the elevator. Small talk wasn't on his agenda, never was. Time was money, and he had neither to waste. The elevator doors slid open at his approach, as if the building itself bent to his will. Inside, he pressed the button for the top floor, his mind already cycling through the day's meetings. The quarterly review, the Shanghai project, the new talent acquisition, all demanding his attention, his precision, his uncompromising standards. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. A message from his executive assistant, Zara. "New interns arriving today. HR needs final approval on office assignments." Elijah frowned. Interns. Necessary but tedious. Fresh faces with more enthusiasm than skill, more theory than practice. He typed back a curt response. "Handle it. I trust your judgment." The elevator chimed, doors opening to reveal the executive floor, his domain. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city he was steadily reshaping, one building at a time. Employees nodded respectfully as he passed, their conversations dropping to hushed whispers. Zara met him at his office door, tablet in hand, her expression professionally neutral. "Good morning, sir. Your 9 a.m. was pushed to 10, and the design team needs your input on the Westlake project before noon." "Fine," he said, taking the coffee she offered. "Anything else?" "The new interns are being oriented in the East Wing. HR suggested you might want to." "No," he cut her off, already moving toward his desk. "That's what we have department heads for." Zara nodded, unfazed by his dismissal. "Of course, I've cleared your schedule for the site visit this afternoon." Elijah settled behind his desk, the weight of his empire spreading out before him in blueprints and contracts. Interns were the furthest thing from his mind. They'd either sink or swim in his company. He didn't have time to hold hands. Little did he know, in less than an hour, one particular intern would crash into his carefully ordered world and change everything. Maya Thorne stood in the crowded orientation room, trying to absorb every detail as the HR director droned on about company policies. At 26, she was older than most of the interns, a fact that hadn't escaped notice. While the others had come straight from prestigious universities, Maya had taken a different path, working her way through community college before earning a scholarship to finish her degree in architectural design. "Each of you will be assigned a temporary workspace while we finalize department placements," the HR director explained, passing out security badges. "These give you access to the main floors, but executive areas require special clearance." Maya accepted her badge, studying the sleek design with the company logo. Frost Architectural Innovations, the pinnacle of modern design, and her dream workplace since she'd first decided to pursue architecture. Getting this internship had been nearly impossible, but she'd fought for it, her portfolio standing out among hundreds of applicants. "You'll find your assigned spaces on this list," the director continued, gesturing to a document being passed around. "Some of you will be sharing offices temporarily." When the list reached Maya, she scanned it quickly, finding her name near the bottom. "Thorne, Maya, room 1542, East Wing." She frowned. The East Wing housed executive offices and specialized design studios. Was this a mistake? "Excuse me," she said, raising her hand. "I think there might be an error with my assignment." The HR director glanced at the list. "No error. That space was specifically allocated this morning. It's a temporary solution until permanent assignments are finalized." Maya nodded, still confused but unwilling to make a scene on her first day. As the orientation wrapped up, she gathered her portfolio and followed the map on her phone to the East Wing, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The East Wing was noticeably quieter, the hallways wider, the decor more sophisticated. Maya felt out of place in her simple black dress and blazer, practical clothes she'd chosen for comfort rather than impression. Around her, executives in designer suits moved with purpose, barely sparing her a glance. Room 1542 was at the end of a long corridor, partially secluded from the main hallway. Maya swiped her badge, surprised when the light turned green, granting her access. Inside, she found a modest office with a desk, computer, and a small sitting area. Large windows offered a stunning view of the city, and built-in shelves displayed architectural models and design books. "This can't be right," she murmured, setting down her bag. The space was too nice for an intern, too private. A note on the desk caught her attention. Temporary assignment. Meeting at 2 p.m. with design team. Business attire required. Maya checked her watch, 11:30 a.m. She had time to settle in and prepare, but the business attire note gave her pause. Her current outfit was professional but basic. If she was meeting with a design team, she wanted to make the right impression. Thankfully, she'd packed a change of clothes, a more formal blouse and skirt she'd brought just in case. The office had no attached bathroom, but it seemed private enough. She locked the door, quickly changing out of her blazer and beginning to unbutton her dress. She was halfway through changing, her dress unbuttoned and hanging open to reveal her slip underneath, when the door suddenly swung open. Maya froze, clutching her dress closed, as Elijah Frost stepped into the room. Elijah had been in the middle of reviewing blueprints when Zara informed him of a scheduling conflict. The conference room for his 2 p.m. meeting had been double booked, and they needed an alternative space immediately. "What about 1542? He'd suggested, remembering the rarely used office he sometimes used for private consultations. "It should be empty." Zara had hesitated. "I believe that's been temporarily." "It's fine," he'd cut her off, already moving toward the door. "I'll check it myself. Have the team meet me there at 2. Now, as he stood in the doorway of room 1542, Elijah found himself completely unprepared for who was waiting inside. A woman stood by the desk, her dress half unbuttoned, exposing the curve of her collarbone and the delicate fabric of her slip. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and her eyes, wide with shock, held his with an intensity that stopped him cold. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension. Then Maya found her voice, sharp and clear despite her compromising position. "Do you mind?" Elijah blinked, his usual composure momentarily shattered. This is my office." "No," she countered, clutching her dress tighter. "This is room 1542, assigned to me this morning. If you're lost, I suggest you try knocking next time." Her directness caught him off guard. People didn't speak to Elijah Frost that way. Especially not interns caught in such a vulnerable position. They apologized, they stammered, they retreated. She did none of those things. "You're an intern," he stated, his eyes narrowing as he noticed her badge on the desk. "And you're still standing in the doorway while I'm half-dressed," she replied, her chin lifting slightly. "Either come in and close the door or leave and close the door. But standing there is not an option." A strange feeling stirred in Elijah's chest, something between amusement and admiration. Without thinking, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Maya's eyebrows shot up. That wasn't an invitation to stay. "This is my building," he said, his voice regaining its usual authority, "and you're in a space that shouldn't have been assigned to you." "Then take it up with HR, she suggested, gesturing toward the door with her free hand. "After I finish changing." Elijah crossed his arms, studying her with newfound interest. Most people in the company couldn't hold his gaze for more than a few seconds. This woman, this intern, hadn't looked away once. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone softer than he'd intended. "Maya Thorne," she answered, her expression guarded. "And you're Elijah Frost. Now that we've established who we are, could you please leave so I can button my dress?" A smile, rare and unexpected, tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You're not what I expected, Miss Thorne." "I'm rarely what people expect," she replied, her grip on her dress never loosening. "It's a gift." Elijah found himself at a crossroads. The rational choice was to leave, to let her finish changing in privacy. But something kept him rooted to the spot, something in her unwavering gaze, in the quiet dignity she maintained despite her compromised position. "I have a meeting in this room at 2, he said finally. "You'll need to relocate." Maya nodded once, her expression unreadable. "I'll be gone by 1:30, now if you don't mind." Elijah hesitated, then inclined his head in a gesture that might have been respect. "We'll speak again, Miss Thorne." It wasn't a question or a suggestion. It was a certainty. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of something on her desk. Sketches, hand-drawn and detailed, of a building design he didn't recognize. Something about the lines, the flow of the structure, caught his attention. But before he could look closer, Maya cleared her throat pointedly. Elijah met her eyes one last time, finding challenge there rather than embarrassment. With a final nod, he stepped out, closing the door behind him. In the hallway, he paused, an unfamiliar sensation settling in his chest. In less than 5 minutes, Maya Thorne had managed to do what few had ever accomplished. She'd made Elijah Frost curious. And Elijah Frost didn't do curious. He did control, precision, certainty. Until now. Inside the office, Maya released the breath she'd been holding, her hands trembling slightly as she quickly buttoned her dress. Her heart pounded against her ribs, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She'd just stood her ground against Elijah Frost, the Elijah Frost, while half-dressed and completely vulnerable. Instead of cowering or apologizing, she'd challenged him in his own building. "What were you thinking?" she muttered to herself, smoothing her dress with shaky hands. But even as she questioned her actions, a small, defiant part of her refused to regret them. She'd come to Frost Architectural Innovations to prove herself, to show that she belonged in this world despite her unconventional path. Backing down, even to the CEO, wasn't an option. Still, as she gathered her things to relocate, Maya couldn't shake the memory of his expression when he'd first seen her. That flash of surprise that had transformed his cold, calculating gaze into something almost human. For just a moment she'd glimpsed the man behind the reputation, and it had left her more unsettled than she cared to admit. She glanced at her sketches, preliminary designs for her portfolio project, and wondered if he'd noticed them. The thought sent a fresh wave of anxiety through her. Those designs weren't ready for scrutiny, especially not from someone like Elijah Frost. As she packed up her belongings, Maya tried to convince herself that this was just a bizarre first-day mishap, an awkward encounter that would soon be forgotten. Elijah Frost oversaw hundreds of employees and dozens of projects. He wouldn't remember one defiant intern, but his parting words echoed in her mind. "We'll speak again, Miss Thorne." Something told her this was just the beginning. What do you think? Did Maya handle the situation right? Or should she have been more cautious with the CEO? And what about Elijah? Was he intrigued by her defiance or just surprised by it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The next morning, Maya arrived early, determined to establish a routine that would keep her far from Elijah Frost's orbit. She'd been reassigned to a shared space in the intern bullpen, a crowded, noisy area where a dozen new hires huddled over computers and drafting tables. "I heard you got exiled from the East Wing," said a voice beside her. Maya looked up to find a young man with bright eyes and a friendly smile extending his hand. "Dominic Barkley," he introduced himself. "Fellow design intern and unofficial gossip collector." Maya shook his hand, offering a cautious smile. "Maya Thorne, and I wasn't exiled, just reassigned." Dominic leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Word is you had a run-in with Frost himself. Care to share the gory details?" Maya stiffened. "There are no gory details. There was a mix-up with office assignments, that's all." "Uh-huh," Dominic nodded, clearly unconvinced. "That explains why Zara from the executive floor has been asking about you." Maya's stomach dropped. "What?" "Relax," Dominic grinned. "If Frost wanted you gone, you'd be gone already. The fact that you're still here means you either impressed him or scared him, both equally impressive feats." Before Maya could respond, their supervisor called the interns to attention, outlining the day's assignments. Maya was tasked with research for the Westlake project, a luxury residential complex that had been mentioned in her orientation packet. As the morning progressed, Maya immersed herself in work, grateful for the distraction. The Westlake project was fascinating, an ambitious blend of modern aesthetics and environmental sustainability. She lost herself in floor plans and material specifications, making notes and sketching alternative approaches. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the hush that fell over the bullpen until Dominic nudged her sharply. "Don't look now," he whispered. "But the big boss is here." Maya's head snapped up to see Elijah Frost standing in the doorway, his imposing figure drawing every eye in the room. He scanned the space slowly, his expression unreadable, until his gaze landed on her. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, and Maya felt that same electric tension from the day before, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Then, without a word, he turned to the supervisor and began discussing something in low tones. "Okay, that was weird," Dominic muttered. "He never comes down here." Maya forced herself to look away, focusing on her sketches with renewed intensity. "I'm sure he has his reasons." "Yeah, and I'm betting one of them is about 5'7" with an attitude that matches his own." Maya shot him a warning glance, but before she could respond, the supervisor approached her desk. "Thorne," he said, his voice carefully neutral, "Mr. Frost would like you to join the Westlake project meeting this afternoon. Conference room A, 2 p.m. Maya nodded, keeping her expression professional despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. "Of course, thank you." As the supervisor walked away, Dominic let out a low whistle. "Interns don't get invited to those meetings. What did you do to get on his radar?" "Nothing," Maya insisted, though the memory of standing before Elijah, dress half-buttoned, flashed through her mind. "I'm just doing my job." But as she returned to her research, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that her carefully planned path at Frost Architectural Innovations had just veered into uncharted territory. And Elijah Frost was the one changing the map. Conference Room A was intimidating, a sleek, modern space with a massive table and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. When Maya arrived, precisely 5 minutes early, the room was already half full with senior designers and project managers, their conversations hushed and serious. She hesitated in the doorway, suddenly aware of how out of place she was. These were the company's top talents, people with years of experience and impressive portfolios. And she was, what? An intern who'd had an awkward encounter with the CEO? "Miss Thorne," a cool voice called from behind her. "You're blocking the entrance." Maya turned to find Elijah standing there, his expression impassive but his eyes sharp with recognition. Today, he wore a charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, his presence commanding even in silence. "Mr. Frost," she acknowledged, stepping aside to let him pass. "I apologize." He moved past her into the room, and the atmosphere immediately shifted. Backs straightened, voices quieted, attention focused. This was his domain, and everyone knew it. "Take a seat," he instructed, gesturing to an empty chair near the middle of the table. Maya complied, aware of the curious glances from the other attendees. She kept her posture straight, her expression composed, though her heart raced beneath her carefully chosen blouse, fully buttoned this time. The meeting began with project updates, each team member reporting on their progress. Maya listened intently, taking notes and absorbing every detail. The Westlake project was more complex than she'd realized, a blend of residential and commercial spaces designed to create a self-contained community. "The central courtyard design isn't working," Elijah stated, cutting through a presentation by one of the senior designers. "It's stagnant, uninspired." The designer, a man with decades of experience, faltered. "We've explored several options." "Not the right ones," Elijah interrupted, his tone final. "We need something that makes a statement, something that captures the essence of the project." His gaze swept the room, challenging anyone to disagree. When no one spoke, he continued, "I want fresh perspectives, new approaches." His eyes landed on Maya. "Miss Thorne, you've been researching this project. What are your thoughts?" The room went silent, all eyes turning to her. Maya felt her mouth go dry, the sudden attention overwhelming. But beneath the anxiety, a spark of determination flared. This was why she was here, to contribute, to prove herself. "The current design treats the courtyard as an afterthought," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "But it should be the heart of the community, not just a space between buildings." She reached for her tablet, pulling up a rough sketch she'd made during her research. What if we inverted the approach? Instead of designing buildings and fitting a courtyard between them, we design around the courtyard as the central feature. She passed her tablet to Elijah, who studied it with narrowed eyes. The sketch showed a flowing, organic space where the boundaries between buildings and courtyard blurred, creating a seamless transition between indoor and outdoor living. "It's just a concept," she added quickly, "but I think it aligns with the project's goal of creating a cohesive community rather than just another luxury development." Elijah examined the sketch for what felt like an eternity, his expression unreadable. Then, without warning, he passed the tablet around the table. "This," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "is the direction we should be exploring." Maya blinked, certain she'd misheard. Had Elijah Frost just endorsed her idea? In front of the entire project team? The senior designer leaned forward, studying the sketch with a frown. "It's an interesting concept, but implementing it would require significant revisions to the existing plans." "Then revise them," Elijah stated, his tone brooking no argument. "Miss Thorne will assist you." Maya's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "Sir?" Elijah met her gaze, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw the ghost of a smile touch his lips. "You conceived it. You should help develop it. Unless you don't think you're capable?" It was a challenge, plain and simple, and despite the voice of caution in her head, Maya found herself responding to it. "I'm capable," she said firmly. "Thank you for the opportunity." The meeting continued, but Maya barely heard the rest of the discussion. Her mind raced with implications. She'd just been elevated from research intern to project contributor, a leap that typically took months, if not years. And it had happened because Elijah Frost had singled her out. As the meeting concluded, people filed out, casting curious glances her way. Maya gathered her notes, still processing what had just occurred, when she realized Elijah had lingered behind. "A word, Miss Thorne," he said, his voice low but commanding. Maya nodded, her pulse quickening as the last of the team members exited, leaving them alone in the vast conference room. Elijah studied her for a moment, his blue eyes intense. That was a bold move, presenting an alternative to a senior designer's work. "You asked for my thoughts," she replied, meeting his gaze. "I gave them honestly. Most interns would have played it safe, offered minor tweaks, not a complete reimagining." Maya straightened her shoulders. "I'm not most interns." "No," he agreed, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. "You're not." A silence stretched between them, charged with something Maya couldn't quite name. It wasn't just tension or curiosity, it was recognition, a mutual awareness that transcended their respective positions. "Why did you apply to Frost Innovations?" he asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. "Because you're the best," she answered honestly, "and I want to learn from the best." Elijah nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. "Your background is unconventional. Community college, work experience before completing your degree, not the typical path for our interns." Maya stiffened, a defensive response rising to her lips, but Elijah continued before she could speak. "It gives you a perspective they lack, a practical understanding of how spaces function not just in theory." It was as close to a compliment as she'd heard him give anyone, and it left her momentarily speechless. "Thank you," she managed finally. Elijah moved toward the door, pausing beside her. "Don't thank me yet, Miss Thorne. I've just added significantly to your workload, and I expect results that justify my decision." His proximity sent a shiver down her spine, not fear, but something more complex, more unsettling. "I won't disappoint you," she said, the words coming out more intensely than she'd intended. Elijah's gaze lingered on her face, searching for something she couldn't identify. "See that you don't," he replied softly, before striding out of the room, leaving Maya alone with her racing thoughts and the lingering scent of his cologne. What do you think is happening between Maya and Elijah? Is he genuinely impressed by her work? Or is there something more to his interest? And how will the other employees react to her sudden promotion? Share your predictions in the comments. News of Maya's unexpected promotion spread through Frost Innovations like wildfire. By the next morning, the whispers had evolved from curious speculation to outright gossip. "She must have something on him," one designer muttered in the break room. "Maybe he's trying to prove he's progressive by promoting a woman of color," another suggested. "Or maybe," Dominic countered, loud enough for Maya to hear as she entered, "she's actually talented," and he recognized it. Maya shot him a grateful smile, though the comment stung more than she cared to admit. She'd worked twice as hard as anyone to get here, overcoming obstacles most of her peers couldn't imagine. To have her achievement reduced to office politics, or, worse, some imagined personal connection to Elijah, was infuriating. But she didn't have time to dwell on it. The senior designer, James Harrington, had scheduled an early meeting to discuss her courtyard concept, and she'd spent half the night preparing detailed sketches to support her idea. When she arrived at his office, James was already waiting, his expression guarded but professional. "Miss Thorne," he greeted her, gesturing to a chair. "Let's get straight to the point. Elijah rarely takes such an immediate interest in an intern's work. I'm curious about what prompted it." Maya met his gaze steadily. "My ideas, I hope. Nothing more." James studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Show me what you've got." They delved into her concept, James challenging her at every turn. But instead of intimidating her, his questions pushed her to articulate her vision more clearly, to defend her choices with logic and creativity. By the end of the meeting, something had shifted in James's demeanor, a grudging respect replacing his initial skepticism. "You've got a good eye," he admitted, reviewing her final sketch. "Raw, but promising. We'll present a refined version at next week's review." Maya left his office with a mixture of relief and determination. One hurdle cleared, but many more ahead. As she made her way back to the intern area, she rounded a corner and nearly collided with Elijah, who was deep in conversation with Zara. "Mr. Frost," she acknowledged, stepping back quickly. Elijah paused mid-sentence, his attention shifting to her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Miss Thorne," he replied, his voice cool but his eyes alert. "How was your meeting with James?" The fact that he knew about the meeting, that he was tracking her progress, sent an unexpected thrill through her. "Productive," she answered, keeping her tone professional. "We're refining the concept for next week's review." Elijah nodded, a barely perceptible smile touching his lips. "Good. I look forward to seeing it." There was something in the way he said it, a personal interest that went beyond professional curiosity, that made Maya's cheeks warm. "I should get back to work," she said, suddenly aware of Zara's observant gaze. "Of course," Elijah agreed, stepping aside to let her pass. But as she moved by him, he added quietly, "Don't let them intimidate you, Maya. You earned this." The use of her first name, intimate, unexpected, caught her off guard. By the time she turned to respond, he was already walking away, Zara at his side. Maya stood frozen, the echo of her name and his voice lingering in her mind. It wasn't just what he'd said, but how he'd said it, with a warmth that contradicted his usual cool demeanor. For the rest of the day, she tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to that brief encounter. What was happening between them? Was it merely professional mentorship or something more complicated? And why, despite all her determination to keep things strictly professional, did her heart race every time he looked at her? Elijah sat in his office late that evening, the city lights glittering beyond his windows as he reviewed project reports. But his mind wasn't on budgets or timelines. It was on Maya Thorne. He'd reviewed her file after their first encounter, curious about the woman who'd stood her ground while half-dressed in his office. What he'd found had surprised him. A non-traditional student who'd worked full-time while earning her degree, whose portfolio showed raw talent and practical innovation rather than the polished but predictable work of most graduates. She was different, authentic, unafraid to challenge conventions, including his, and it fascinated him in a way he hadn't experienced in years. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Zara entered, carrying a folder. "The updated Westlake projections you requested," she said, placing it on his desk. She hesitated, then added, "And the background check on Maya Thorne." Elijah frowned. "I didn't request a background check." Zara's expression remained neutral. "The board did. Standard procedure when an intern is fast-tracked to project contribution." He took the file, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. "The board doesn't make decisions about my staff." "Of course not," Zara agreed smoothly. "But they are curious about your sudden interest in Miss Thorne's career." Elijah's jaw tightened. "My interest is in talent, Zara. Nothing more." She nodded, but her eyes held a knowing look that bothered him more than he cared to admit. After she left, Elijah opened the file, scanning its contents. Maya's life laid bare in clinical detail. Her childhood in a working-class neighborhood, her mother's early death, her struggle to finance her education. Nothing scandalous, nothing that should concern the board. But as he read, a deeper understanding of Maya emerged. Her resilience, her determination, the obstacles she'd overcome to reach Frost Innovations. It painted a picture of a woman who'd fought for everything she had, who'd never been handed anything, including, he realized with sudden clarity, her current opportunity. She'd earned it through talent and hard work, not through any connection to him. The thought settled something in his mind. Whatever was developing between them, this strange, electric awareness, it had to remain secondary to her professional growth. She deserved that much. Elijah closed the file, his decision made. He would continue to mentor her, to challenge her, to push her toward excellence, but he would maintain professional boundaries, for her sake as much as his own, no matter how difficult it might be. The week passed in a blur of meetings and design revisions. Maya worked closely with James, refining her courtyard concept into a comprehensive design that integrated seamlessly with the existing Westlake plans. To her surprise, James proved to be a demanding but fair mentor, pushing her to justify every decision while respecting her core vision. By the time the review meeting approached, they had developed a working relationship based on mutual respect, a significant achievement given the circumstances of her involvement. "You ready for this?" James asked as they gathered their presentation materials. Maya nodded, though butterflies danced in her stomach. "As ready as I'll ever be." The review meeting would include not just the project team, but also key stakeholders and board members, a high-pressure environment where every detail would be scrutinized. And Elijah would be there, watching, evaluating. The thought sent a fresh wave of anxiety through her. She hadn't spoken to him since their brief encounter in the hallway, though she'd felt his presence throughout the week, glimpsing him in meetings, aware of his attention when their paths crossed. Each time, that same electric awareness had hummed between them, unspoken but undeniable. The conference room was packed when they arrived, executives and investors mingling before the presentation. Maya took her place beside James, arranging their materials while trying to ignore the curious glances directed her way. When Elijah entered, the room shifted. Conversations paused, postures straightened. He moved with confident authority, greeting key figures before taking his seat at the head of the table. His eyes met Maya's briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them before he turned his attention to the agenda. The meeting began with project updates, financial projections, and market analyses. Maya listened attentively, her nervousness gradually giving way to focused anticipation as their presentation approached. Finally, James stood. "Next, we'd like to present our revised concept for the Westlake courtyard design. As some of you know, we've taken a new approach based on feedback from our last review." He nodded to Maya, who rose to join him at the presentation screen. "The concept was initially proposed by Maya Thorne," James continued, surprising her with the public acknowledgement. "She'll walk us through the key elements." Maya took a deep breath, centering herself before beginning. The original Westlake design treated the courtyard as a separate entity from the surrounding structures. Our revised approach integrates them into a cohesive whole, where the boundaries between indoor and outdoor spaces blur. She advanced through the slides, explaining each element with growing confidence. As she spoke, she felt the room's energy shift. Initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. The result, she concluded, displaying the final rendering, is a community that flows naturally from private to public spaces, encouraging interaction while respecting individual privacy. A moment of silence followed her presentation, then questions began. Probing, challenging, but engaged. Maya answered each one clearly, her knowledge of the design allowing her to address concerns with confidence. Throughout the discussion, she was acutely aware of Elijah watching her, his expression thoughtful but unreadable. When the questions finally subsided, Elijah spoke for the first time since her presentation began. "This represents a significant departure from our original vision," he said, his voice carrying easily across the room. "But it's the right direction. The integration of space reflects how people actually live, not how we think they should live." His eyes met Maya's, a quiet pride in his gaze that made her heart skip. "Well done, Miss Thorne, Mr. Harrington." The meeting continued, but Maya barely heard the rest. Elijah's approval, public, unequivocal, was more than she dared hope for. As the meeting concluded, people filed out, several stopping to congratulate her and James on the presentation. Maya gathered her notes, a sense of accomplishment warming her chest. "Miss Thorne?" Elijah's voice came from behind her. "A moment, please." She turned to find him standing closer than she'd expected, his tall frame blocking out the bustle of departing executives. "Of course," she replied, aware of curious glances from those still lingering. "Walk with me," he said. Not a request, but not quite a command either. They left the conference room together, his presence beside her, drawing attention as they moved through the corridors. Maya kept her expression neutral, though her mind raced with questions. Elijah led her to a small terrace overlooking the city, a private space she hadn't known existed. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the skyline, bathing everything in golden light. "You impressed them today?" he said, leaning against the railing. "Not an easy feat with that crowd." Maya joined him at the railing, maintaining a professional distance. "Thank you for the opportunity, and for supporting the concept." "I don't support ideas out of charity, Maya. I support them because they're right." There it was again, her first name, spoken with a familiarity that sent warmth spreading through her. "Still," she said, meeting his gaze, "I appreciate the chance to prove myself." Elijah studied her for a moment, his blue eyes intense in the golden light. "You've more than proven yourself. The question is, what's next?" Maya tilted her head, confused. "Next? For you," he clarified. "Your internship ends in 3 months. Have you thought about what follows?" The question caught her off guard. Most interns weren't asked about their future plans by the CEO, especially not halfway through their term. "I hope to secure a permanent position," she answered honestly. "Ideally here, but you're concerned about the perception," he finished for her, his insight surprising her. "That any offer might be seen as favoritism rather than recognition of your talent." Maya nodded slowly, struck by how accurately he'd read her concerns. "The whispers have already started. People think there's something inappropriate happening." Elijah's expression darkened. "Because I recognized your ability, or because you're a woman of color who dared to excel?" The bluntness of his question, acknowledging realities most executives would dance around, left her momentarily speechless. "Both, probably," she admitted finally. "Plus the fact that our first meeting was unusual." A smile tugged at his lips, transforming his serious features. "That's one way to describe it." The memory hung between them, her half-dressed, him stunned into rare silence. In the weeks since, it had become almost a private joke, the awkwardness giving way to something more complex. "I've reviewed your file," Elijah said, his tone shifting back to professional. "Your path to architecture wasn't conventional." Maya tensed slightly. "No, it wasn't." "That's not a criticism," he clarified, his eyes softening. "It's what makes your perspective valuable. You see things differently because your experiences are different." The validation, so unexpected, so genuine, touched something deep inside her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot." Elijah straightened, his professional demeanor returning. "I want you to lead the development of the courtyard design. Not assist, lead. James will oversee, but the vision will be yours." Maya's eyes widened. That's a significant responsibility for an intern." "You're not just an intern anymore, Maya. You're a designer who happens to be completing an internship." The distinction was subtle but meaningful, a recognition of her as a professional, not just a temporary position. "I won't let you down," she promised, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Elijah nodded, a quiet confidence in his expression. "I know you won't." As they stood there, the city spread out before them and the sun setting in a blaze of color, Maya felt something shift between them, a deepening of connection that transcended professional mentorship. And despite all her caution, all her determination to keep things strictly professional, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. Not just as a mentor or boss, but as a man who saw her, truly saw her, when others looked past. The realization was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. "What do you think about Elijah's decision to promote Maya further? Is he crossing professional boundaries or genuinely recognizing talent? And how do you think Maya should navigate the growing connection between them?" Share your thoughts in the comments. The weeks that followed transformed Maya's position at Frost Innovations. Her promotion to lead designer on the Courtyard project elevated her from anonymous intern to recognized talent, a transition that brought both opportunities and challenges. Some colleagues embraced her, impressed by her work and Elijah's endorsement. Others kept their distance, resentment simmering beneath professional smiles. The whispers continued, growing more elaborate with each passing day. She must be sleeping with him, one jealous designer muttered in the break room, unaware that Maya was just around the corner. "Don't be crude," another replied. "But you have to admit it's strange how quickly she's risen. No one gets that kind of attention from Frost." Maya had learned to ignore most of it, focusing instead on proving herself through her work. But the constant speculation wore on her, making her hyper-aware of every interaction with Elijah. And there were many. As her project expanded, they met regularly, reviewing designs, discussing approaches, debating details. Each meeting strengthened their professional rapport, but also deepened that undeniable connection between them. Elijah was different with her, more open, less guarded. He listened to her ideas with genuine interest, challenged her thinking without dismissing it, and occasionally revealed glimpses of the man behind the CEO facade. "My father was a construction worker," he told her during one late-night review session, surprising her with the personal disclosure. "He taught me to respect the practical realities of design, not just the aesthetics." "Is that why you're so hands-on with projects?" Maya asked, seizing the rare opportunity to learn more about him. Elijah nodded, a distant look in his eyes. "Buildings aren't just drawings or models. They're living spaces that affect real people. If you don't understand that, you're just making pretty pictures." It was these moments, these brief, unguarded exchanges, that drew Maya to him more than his power or position ever could. Behind the intimidating exterior was a man of principle and passion, whose drive for excellence came from genuine conviction. And despite her best efforts to maintain professional distance, she found herself looking forward to their meetings, treasuring those rare moments when his guard lowered and the real Elijah emerged. The danger in this growing attachment wasn't lost on her. Office romances were complicated under the best circumstances. A relationship with the CEO while she was still establishing her professional reputation would be career suicide. So Maya set boundaries, mental lines she wouldn't cross. She kept their discussions focused on work, declined invitations to after-hours events where they might be alone, and never ever mentioned their first meeting or the tension that had simmered between them since. Elijah seemed to respect these unspoken boundaries, maintaining professional decorum in public and never pushing for more than she offered. But sometimes, when their eyes met across a conference table or their hands brushed while reviewing blueprints, that electric awareness flared between them, impossible to ignore. It was a delicate balance, growing more precarious by the day. The annual Frost Innovations Charity Gala arrived on a crisp autumn evening, transforming the company's main atrium into an elegant venue filled with the city's elite. For Maya, it represented a significant milestone, her first major social event as a recognized member of the Westlake team. She'd agonized over her appearance, finally settling on a deep blue gown that was sophisticated without being flashy. As she entered the atrium, the space took her breath away. Soaring ceilings draped with twinkling lights, modern sculptures illuminated by soft spotlights, the company's best designs showcased in stunning displays. "You clean up nice, Thorne." Dominic greeted her, offering a glass of champagne. "Ready to mingle with the power players?" Maya accepted the glass with a nervous smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Just remember," he advised, scanning the crowd, "these events are where careers are made. The right conversation with the right person can open doors." Maya nodded, though her eyes were already searching the room for one particular figure. She spotted him near the main display, Elijah in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, commanding attention without effort as he spoke with a group of investors. As if sensing her gaze, he glanced up, his eyes finding hers across the crowded room. For a moment, everything else faded, the music, the chatter, the glittering lights, leaving only that connection between them, immediate and intense. Then someone claimed his attention, breaking the spell, and Maya turned away, her heart racing. "Earth to Maya," Dominic teased, following her gaze. "Ah, I see. Admiring the boss from afar?" "Don't start," she warned, taking a sip of champagne to hide her flush. "I was just surveying the room." "Sure you were," he grinned, but dropped the subject as James approached, introducing them to a prominent developer interested in their courtyard design. The evening progressed in a whirl of introductions and conversations. Maya found herself explaining her design philosophy to curious executives, defending her choices to skeptical architects, and receiving unexpected compliments from industry veterans who'd reviewed her work. It was exhilarating and exhausting, a crash course in professional networking that left her both energized and drained. She was taking a moment alone on a small balcony overlooking the atrium when a familiar voice broke the silence. "Hiding from your admirers?" Maya turned to find Elijah standing in the doorway, his expression softer than usual, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Just catching my breath," she replied, suddenly aware of how isolated they were from the main event. "It's been an intense evening." He joined her at the railing, maintaining a respectful distance. "You've impressed a lot of people tonight. Henderson from Westlake Development can't stop talking about your innovative approach to community spaces." Maya smiled, a warm glow of pride spreading through her. "That's good to hear." "It's more than good," Elijah said, his voice dropping lower. "It's exactly what you deserve." There was something in his tone, a personal pride and intimate approval, that sent a shiver down her spine. "Thank you," she said softly, meeting his gaze. "For everything. The opportunity, the mentorship. I wouldn't be here without your support." Elijah shook his head slightly. "You would have found your way eventually. Talent like yours doesn't stay hidden long." The compliment, delivered with such quiet certainty, touched her deeply. This wasn't flattery or manipulation, it was genuine belief in her abilities. "Still," she insisted, "you took a chance on me when others wouldn't have. That matters." A comfortable silence settled between them, the muted sounds of the gala creating a backdrop to their private moment. "You look beautiful tonight," Elijah said finally, the words simple but weighted with meaning. Maya's breath caught, the compliment crossing one of those boundaries she'd so carefully maintained. But instead of deflecting or retreating, she found herself responding honestly. "You don't look so bad yourself," she said, a small smile playing at her lips. His eyes darkened slightly, the professional mask slipping to reveal something more personal, more intense. "Maya," he began, his voice low and intimate. But before he could continue, the balcony door opened and Zara appeared, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Frost, the mayor has arrived and is asking for you," she announced, her eyes flicking between them with barely concealed curiosity. Elijah straightened, his professional demeanor returning instantly. "Of course. Tell him I'll be right there." Zara nodded and withdrew, but the moment had shattered, reality intruding on their brief connection. "Duty calls," Maya said lightly, trying to ease the sudden tension. Elijah nodded, regret flickering across his features. "We'll continue this conversation another time," he said, the words carrying a promise that made her heart race. As he turned to leave, he paused, his hand brushing hers briefly. A touch so light it might have been accidental, yet so deliberate it couldn't be mistaken. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Maya," he said softly, before striding back into the gala, leaving her alone with racing thoughts and the lingering warmth of his touch. The Monday following the gala brought a return to routine, but with a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Maya arrived early, hoping to catch up on work before the usual office bustle began, only to find a small package waiting on her desk. No card, no note, just a sleek box wrapped in simple silver paper. She glanced around, but the office was empty, offering no clues about its origin. Curious, she unwrapped it carefully, lifting the lid to reveal a vintage architectural compass set, brass and ivory, clearly antique, nestled in velvet lining. It was exquisite, the kind of tool that combined beauty and function in perfect balance. Maya's breath caught as she lifted one of the compasses, examining its precise craftsmanship. This wasn't a casual gift, it was thoughtful, personal, chosen with specific knowledge of her interests. And she had little doubt about who had sent it. "Nice," Dominic whistled, appearing beside her desk and eyeing the compass set. "Secret admirer?" Maya closed the box quickly, her cheeks warming. "Just a thank you gift, probably from one of the Westlake clients." Dominic raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but before he could press further, their supervisor called the team together for the morning briefing. Throughout the day, Maya found her thoughts returning to the gift and its unspoken message. It wasn't overtly romantic, yet it carried an intimacy that transcended professional appreciation. Elijah was acknowledging their connection, but in a way that respected the boundaries she'd established. The question was, did she want those boundaries to remain? The answer came later that afternoon, when she encountered Elijah in the executive hallway. He was emerging from a meeting deep in conversation with board members, his expression serious and focused. When he spotted her, something shifted in his demeanor, a subtle softening, a momentary break in his professional facade. Their eyes met, and in that brief exchange, everything was said without words. "Thank you for the gift. It was perfect. You're welcome. It reminded me of you." No one else would have noticed the silent communication, the slight nod he gave her before continuing his conversation. But Maya felt it like a physical touch. And in that moment, she knew the boundaries between them were already blurring, despite her best intentions. The realization should have frightened her, should have sent her retreating behind professional walls. Instead, it filled her with a quiet anticipation, a sense that they were moving toward something inevitable, something worth the risk. As she turned to continue down the hallway, Maya made a decision. She would maintain professional decorum, focus on establishing her reputation through her work, and never compromise her integrity or his. But she would no longer pretend that what existed between them was merely professional respect. It was more, had been from that first startling encounter, and denying it wouldn't make it disappear. The question wasn't whether they would acknowledge the connection, but when and how, and what it would mean for both of them when they did. What do you think about the compass gift? Was it an appropriate gesture from a mentor, or is Elijah crossing professional lines? And is Maya right to acknowledge their connection, or should she maintain stricter boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Westlake project entered its final design phase as autumn deepened toward winter. Maya's courtyard concept had evolved from rough sketch to detailed blueprint, earning praise from clients and colleagues alike. Her position within the company had solidified, no longer just the intern Elijah favored, but a designer with proven talent and growing influence. But as her professional standing strengthened, the personal connection between her and Elijah grew more complex. Their interactions remained outwardly professional, yet charged with an undercurrent of awareness that neither could ignore. Small moments accumulated. A lingering glance across a conference table, fingers brushing during document exchanges, conversations that strayed from work to personal insights. The compass set remained on her desk, a daily reminder of the unspoken understanding between them. She'd never directly thanked him for it, and he'd never mentioned sending it. Yet they both knew, and that shared secret created an intimacy that transcended words. Office gossip had evolved too. The crude speculation about a sexual relationship had given way to more nuanced observations. "They have a connection," one designer remarked during lunch. "It's not just physical, it's like they speak the same language." "Have you noticed how he actually listens when she speaks?" another added. Elijah Frost, actually considering someone else's opinion. It's unprecedented. Maya tried to ignore the comments, but they reflected a truth she couldn't deny. Something had changed in Elijah since their first encounter. A subtle softening, an openness that hadn't existed before. And while she knew better than to take full credit for the transformation, she couldn't help wondering if their connection had played a role. The project deadline loomed, bringing late nights and intense work sessions. One evening, as the office emptied and the city lights blinked on outside, Maya found herself alone in the design studio, finalizing details for the next day's presentation. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear the door open, didn't sense another presence until a voice broke the silence. "You should go home, Maya. It's past 10. She looked up to find Elijah standing nearby, his tie loosened, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. In this more casual state, he looked less like the intimidating CEO and more like the man beneath the title, still commanding but approachable. "I could say the same to you," she replied, setting down her pencil. "Don't billionaire CEOs have homes to go to?" A smile tugged at his lips, those rare, genuine smiles that transformed his face. "We do. We just forget to use them sometimes." He moved closer, examining the drawings spread across her desk. The final revisions? Maya nodded, suddenly aware of his proximity, the faint scent of his cologne mingling with the familiar smell of drafting paper and graphite. Just making sure everything's perfect for tomorrow. It already is, he said, his voice softening as he studied her work. You've exceeded every expectation, Maya. The clients are thrilled. The praise warmed her, but it was the way he said it, with personal pride, not just professional approval, that made her heart beat faster. Thank you, she said quietly, for believing in the concept when it was just a rough idea. I believed in you, he corrected, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. The concept was just an extension of that. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with months of restrained feelings and professional boundaries. Maya knew she should look away, should gather her things and leave, before this moment evolved into something neither could retreat from. Instead, she held his gaze, allowing herself to acknowledge what had been building between them since that first startling encounter. Elijah, she began, his name feeling intimate on her lips. What are we doing? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Walking a very fine line, he admitted, his voice low and honest. One I've never approached before. Because I work for you, she stated, the professional reality they'd both been navigating. Partly, he agreed. But also because you matter too much to risk getting this wrong. The admission, so straightforward, so vulnerable, touched something deep inside her. This wasn't just attraction or convenience. It was deeper, more significant. I've tried to keep my distance, he continued, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of uncertainty, to maintain professional boundaries. But I find myself looking for you in every meeting, thinking about your perspective on every decision. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, his honesty breaking down the last of her carefully constructed defenses. I've done the same, she confessed softly. Tried to focus only on the work, to ignore whatever this is between us, but it's always there. Elijah moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw as he restrained himself. Your internship ends next week, he said, the words carrying a weight beyond their surface meaning. You've been offered a permanent position in the design department. Maya nodded, having received the offer that morning, a prestigious placement that recognized her contributions to the Westlake project. I know, she replied. I haven't given my answer yet. Because of this, he guessed, gesturing between them, because of what it might mean for your reputation, your career. She appreciated his understanding, his recognition of the complexities she faced. Partly, she admitted, but also because I need to know what this is before I commit to staying. Elijah's expression softened, a vulnerability in his eyes she'd never seen before. What do you want it to be, Maya? The question hung between them, honest and direct. No games, no power plays, just two people acknowledging a connection that had defied professional boundaries from the start. Maya took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Something real, she answered finally. Not just attraction or convenience, something worth the complications it will bring. Elijah nodded slowly, understanding in his gaze. I want that too, he said quietly. More than I've wanted anything in a very long time. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek in a touch so gentle it made her heart ache. But I won't ask you to risk your professional standing for me. Whatever happens between us, your career is yours, earned through talent and hard work, not through any connection to me. The promise, his recognition of what mattered most to her, was the final confirmation she needed. This wasn't just desire or infatuation. It was respect, understanding, a recognition of who she was beyond any attraction between them. Maya leaned into his touch, her decision made. Then we'll figure it out, she said softly. Together. Elijah's smile, warm, genuine, relieved, transformed his face. Together, he agreed, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. For a moment, they stood there, the office quiet around them, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. Then, with deliberate slowness, Elijah leaned forward, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt like both a beginning and an inevitability. Gentle at first, then deepening, as months of restraint gave way to honest emotion. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, Maya knew they had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But for the first time since their paths had collided in that temporary office, she didn't fear what it meant. Whatever challenges lay ahead, office politics, professional boundaries, the complications of their positions, they would face them together, with the same honesty and respect that had brought them to this moment. And that, she realized, was worth every risk. Do you believe workplace relationships can succeed despite power imbalances? What challenges do you think Maya and Elijah will face going forward? Share your thoughts in the comments. The transition from professional colleagues to something more wasn't seamless. Maya and Elijah navigated it carefully, aware of the scrutiny they faced and the potential impact on her career. They established ground rules: absolute professionalism at work, no special treatment or favoritism, and complete transparency with HR about their relationship once her internship officially ended. It wasn't perfect. Whispers still followed them, and some colleagues viewed her success with renewed skepticism. But it was honest, and that mattered to them both. 6 months after that first kiss in the design studio, Maya stood in Elijah's penthouse apartment, gazing out at the city skyline. Her courtyard design for Westlake was now under construction, her position in the company secure based on merit and consistent excellence. The compass set he'd given her sat on her desk at home, a reminder of where they'd started and how far they'd come. "Penny for your thoughts," Elijah said, joining her at the window, his arms slipping around her waist. Maya leaned into him, smiling. "Just thinking about that first day, when you walked in on me changing. If someone had told me then where we'd end up, I would have laughed." Elijah chuckled, the sound warm against her hair. "I knew something had changed the moment I saw you. I just didn't understand what." "When did you know?" she asked, curious about when his professional interest had evolved into something deeper. He considered the question, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "There wasn't a single moment," he admitted. "It was gradual. Your confidence in meetings, the way you stood your ground when challenged, how you saw solutions others missed. But if I had to choose—" He paused, a smile touching his lips. "It was when you presented your courtyard concept, not just the design itself, but the passion behind it. Your understanding that architecture isn't just about buildings, but about how people live within them. That's when I knew you were someone I wanted in my life, not just my company." Maya turned in his arms, facing him. "For me, it was the compass set," she confessed. "Not because it was expensive or beautiful, though it was both, but because it showed you knew me, really knew me, beyond the office and the projects. That's when I stopped fighting whatever was happening between us." Elijah's expression softened, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "I've never regretted it," he said quietly. "Not for a moment." "Even with all the complications?" she asked, thinking of the board meetings where their relationship had been questioned, the clients who'd initially doubted her qualifications, the adjustments they'd made to ensure her career remained her own. "Especially with the complications," he replied, his voice firm. "They proved what we have is worth fighting for." Maya smiled, rising on tiptoes to kiss him, a gesture that had become familiar but never routine, comfortable but still thrilling. When they parted, Elijah kept her close, his expression turning more serious. "I have something to ask you," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice that was so unlike his usual confidence. Maya's heart quickened, sensing the weight of the moment. "What is it?" He took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. "I had this whole speech planned," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "About how you changed my life, how you made me see the world differently, how I can't imagine my future without you in it." Maya's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a stunning ring, elegant and unique, with a center diamond surrounded by sapphires that matched the blue of her dress from the gala. "But the truth is simpler than that," Elijah continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "I love you, Maya Thorne. I love your brilliance, your integrity, your courage. And I want to build a life with you, not as CEO and employee, but as partners, equals." He took the ring from its box, holding it between them. "Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Maya's vision, joy expanding in her chest until she thought it might overflow. This man, who had once seemed so untouchable, so removed from ordinary emotion, was offering her his heart with the same honesty and directness that had drawn her to him from the start. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of moments like this one, Maya thought about how far they'd come from that first startling encounter. An accidental meeting, a moment of vulnerability, a connection neither had expected. These had been the foundation of something profound and lasting. Not because of his wealth or her talent, but because they had seen each other, truly seen each other, when no one else did. And in that seeing, they had found something worth every risk, every challenge, every moment of doubt. They had found home. Sometimes the most meaningful relationships begin in the most unexpected ways. A chance encounter, an awkward moment, a connection that defies explanation, these can be the foundation of something lasting and true. Maya and Elijah's journey reminds us that love doesn't always arrive on schedule or follow the rules. Sometimes it barges in, catches us off guard, and changes everything. Have you ever experienced a relationship that began in an unexpected way? Share your stories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the complicated, beautiful, unpredictable nature of human connection. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the wrong door leads to exactly the right person.